So we're going to start a series of talks here called the Confluence of Core. And when I talk about the core body, the primary core body, in my definition, is from the middle diaphragm to the pelvic floor diaphragm and everything in between. So we just finished this, what I consider very lovely saturation flow. And the one thing the saturation flow has in common with the core is that every one of these movements was either initiated from the core and emanated out from there, or it moved from one part of the body to the other through the core. So which means the core is both an instigator of movement and also a mediator of movement. It's really important to understand that. It is much more than a place where we hang our six-pack abs, so much more. In fact, the research is showing that things like crunches are not so good for you. There's many other ways of strengthening the core. Our core body is very rich, it's very sophisticated, and it's where our muscles, our bones, our nerves, our viscera organs, our breath, it all comes together right here. And it all sits and rests in here. And it influences both our physical and emotional health to the highest of highest degrees. It is what I call a confluence of many currents of flow. It's not just abs. There's the intrinsic muscles as well. And they dance back and forth together. A case in point, I might have probably told this story many, many times again. You know, I'm almost 74, so maybe I repeat myself a little bit once in a while. But back in my early 30s, I had finished several years of Taekwondo, and the Taekwondo teacher moved from this small town, and a Kung Fu teacher moved in, very skilled. We learned White Crane, Wing Chun Kung Fu's, Tai Chi sword set, lots of Qigong. We learned boxing, and we did a lot of strong work. We did a lot of core stuff with crunches and stuff, with weights hanging off of stuff, all that kind of stuff. And in the beginning, it was like, oh, this hurts. This is like crunches. This doesn't feel so good. What's happening? And I had already just started getting into fluid movements from being introduced to Feldenkrais and Qigong. And all of a sudden, I started to not be my muscles alone in my core body, but I started to feel like, hey, I can leverage this off of my sacrum. I can leverage this movement off of my T12 back and forth through my lumbar vertebra. And suddenly it's like, okay, this is a piece of cake. It was a great workout, but there were moments through this flow where there was a complete relaxation and then a full engagement. And I started to feel what I ultimately realized was the dimmer switch movement from my inner core muscles, my intrinsic core muscles, allowing me to leverage and fulcrum off of my bones, all the way out to my outer core. It was profound. Suddenly, core work became infinitely interesting because then I noticed my organs moving. And then I noticed my diaphragms moving because I wasn't just cranking into here and locking everything down. What you do with crunches often is you start to say, heck with the bones, let's turn our core into bone-like things and we'll leverage off of our core. There's times maybe we need something like that, lifting a heavy bale of hay or something, but most of the time we really need to connect into our total confluence of core. This core, again, is made up of many currents, confluences of currents that flow together. It's our nervous system. The vagus nerve comes down through here, along with our solar plexus, our sacral lumbar plexus, our coccygeal plexus, those centers of nerves. And then those centers of nerves and specific organs and so forth is how the Chinese cultivated their chakra system that are totally integrated with important organs and important nerve centers. They all are in that area. And these, they're muscular. And there's the liquid formation. Our core organs and our abdominal areas, I've heard a wonderful definition of it, is highly sophisticated tubes, sacs, and pouches for the storage of and the movement of fluids and semi-solid fluids. So our belly and our abdomen is a fluid dynamic system as well. And how these currents interact with each other goes a long way in determining our overall health and well-being. As I determined learning how to do core strengthening by including my organs in that, and my vertebra, and my diaphragms, and our digestive systems, it's not just what we eat that's important, it's what we assimilate. If we don't assimilate it, it goes through us. And why wouldn't we assimilate really great food that we do? And I'm not saying don't eat well, because that helps in creating assimilation. So diet is huge. But there's another form of nutrition that I consider, and that is visceral movement. And we get that when we move through our centers and saturation, but we get that when I take a water bottle and I gently trigger point on different areas, and I move areas. I've had clients with ulcerative colitis, one client who was just really stuck and ulcers all through his colon and everything. And I gave him a water bottle that was about this, or just a regular water bottle, and I just had him start to do, and I gave him directions, very gentle trigger point work along his intestines, where all the ulcers were. He did it gently. He avoided increasing the inflammation. Within a year, they did a retest, and those ulcers were gone. He also did nutrition, but he didn't do the medication. And other things like that, where you get your organs moving through there. 1/3 of the blood at any given time is in your abdomen. So when our organs become stagnant or overactive or deficient, it totally affects our digestion, our immunity, our hormones, and even our breathing, and vice versa. So all of these things feed on each other. And that's why when you think of your core, I want you to think of your core as then much more than a place where you hang your six-packs. It's a place where you may drink a six-pack, but hopefully it's just a six-pack of water. But no, I'm just kidding. But it is a place that there's teeming with life, and it's so important. Everything we do in this course is involved with that. And eventually I am going to teach the pulsing of the belly again, and the trigger point works on the belly, because it helps my digestion so much as well. So thanks everybody for listening,